I am so excited to introduce you to this session speaker and one of the Scaling Up's sponsors and Cardinal's best partners. I have Liine with us today, and they are a call and lead tracking platform that gets you the data that you need, the insights to understand what happens to those phone calls and those lead forms, and who actually turns into a book to a patient appointment. So today we have Charlie Winn with us. I'm going to hand it over to him in a minute, and he's going to tell you about the #1 mistake that practices are making with their Google ads. So I won't steal a thunder from him, but I'm going to hand it over to Charlie now, and take it away, Charlie. Have fun.
Thanks, Ashley. You got to add friend to that list. Friend of Cardinal for sure. So thank you. Good morning, all. Thank you guys for being here. As Ashley mentioned, my name is Charlie Winn. And super excited to be involved. We actually were a part of the event last year, and when we saw there was another one, and I'm sure there are going to be many more, we're planning to continue to sponsor and and be involved. So all the sessions I've seen have been great. I'm going to do everything I can to go over a topic that'll help everyone who's attending to raise their game. So as Ashley mentioned, my session is titled "The #1 Mistake Practices Make with Google Ads." Before we hop into the content, just quick sort of background. So again, my name's Charlie. I'm a co-founder and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Liine. We are a marketing analytics software. We focus exclusively on multi-site specialty healthcare practice groups. And a lot of those folks, I think, are involved with, or I know rather, are involved with the event this year. Just saw somebody who was a Liine user, Tracy from Schweiger, in the last session. So Tracy, that was some awesome stuff on the panel. Anyone else who we work with, I appreciate you being on here. So just got some of the folks that we're working with, as I mentioned, specialize in multi-site, so DSOs and MSOs and so forth. Okay, let's dive into the topic at hand. So the #1 mistake, #1 that practices make with Google Ads is they are optimizing Google Ads for what we refer to as proxy metrics, as opposed to actual new patient bookings. And so what I mean by proxy metrics, I mean things like, calls or clicks that aren't what you're really after, which is driving new patient bookings into your practices. And I think there's two reasons why this happens very commonly. One is the tools that have historically been available to marketing leaders, they just really haven't enabled you to automatically optimize for bookings, and thus proxy metrics are sort of just the best that you have, right? We're going to talk in the majority of the presentation about the DIY version of how to do this. But I think you'll find it's a pretty big undertaking. And so when I tell people that it's better to optimize Google Ads or any campaigns, but in this presentation focused on Google Ads for bookings, they logically agree with that. It makes sense. But I think the other element as to why a lot of folks aren't doing this is they don't realize actually how important this really is, and what impact it can have on on your practice. And so we're going to look at some examples of that in a second. Then I'm going to go through, as I mentioned, the do-it-yourself version of how to optimize Google Ads for patient bookings. It is a tall order. There's a lot to it. It's not impossible by any means. But if you're throughout the presentation thinking like, "Wow, I don't think I can do that," or maybe like, "I don't want to do that," we do this automatically for you. So at the very end of the presentation, I'm going to spend just a really short amount of time explaining how that works. And there's going to be a really easy way to reach out to our team if you want to have an initial conversation. We've got some people standing by. Okay, so let's take a look at what actually happens when you optimize Google Ads for appointments. And as I mentioned, it is pretty awesome, the impact that it can have. And what I've got up here are 3 examples of practice groups that we currently work with. And what we found is over the course of 4 to 6 months, I think, are the average for these 3 examples, is when you start feeding Google Ads booked appointments, that is what Google Ads is going to go find, right? If you send Google Ads clicks as the optimization metric, you're going to get more clicks. If you send, first time calls lasting 30 seconds or something, that is what Google Ads is going to deliver. So when you optimize it for actual bookings, the cost per appointment goes down dramatically. In these cases, on average, well over 50%, which of course dramatically changes your marketing ROI equation. And what's happening, right, is Google Ads is automatically, with the signaling of which campaigns are driving bookings, taking dollars away from campaigns that aren't doing that and allocating them to campaigns, that are. So I always like to show people these examples because, again, people logically understand this makes sense, but I don't think they realize to what extent. And another shout out here that's really important as you think about this is who is your marketing agency partner? You need people that have A, expertise, and B, their mindset and focus is to deliver actual patients, right? There's other elements that are leading indicators, but two of these three are groups that we work with alongside Cardinal. And so shout out to Cardinal, the job that they do and helping practices to again, really drive actual new patient bookings. Okay, so DIY, how can you, using, if you were to choose to use sort of the historical tools that you have today, how can you do this on your own? And there's three elements to being able to accomplish it. The first, capturing all interaction types in one place, and we're going to take each one of these individually and break them down. Second, deduplicate leads to track individuals, not interactions. This one is massively important. And then once you've done those two things, then we're going to show you how to manually adjust, or talk about how to manually adjust Google Ads and your spend for patient bookings as opposed to those proxy metrics. So the first element is to make sure that you're capturing all interaction types in one place. And the key word here is all. It's important to remember and to take into account what are the main communication options patients have when they're reaching out to your practice. Because if you're missing any of these, you're not going to be able to do this fully, right? You're going to have holes in the whole feedback loop to Google Ads. So the options, of course, are a phone call. Patient can pick up the phone and call one of your practices. They could fill out a web form like request appointment or contact us or whatever. And then, of course, your team now needs to follow up with those leads. And then the third main one is online booking. I've got up here for practices that have all three of these options. This is the average breakdown of how many patient bookings come through each of them. Some of you may be over-indexing more on web forms based on strategy, for example, but this again is the average for the practices. And if you're not doing online bookings, something I would totally advise to look into, true patient self-scheduling. We've seen a lot of impact of having that as an option, not just in taking patients away from calling and booking and moving that into online bookings, but incrementally increasing total bookings. So side note on looking into that if that's not something that you have done so before. So taking these three communication options for patients into account, this is what you've got to do once you are recording or tracking those. So you've got to set up a call tracking vendor that has very robust DNI or dynamic insertion capabilities, meaning when people are getting to your website or landing pages, there's got to be the ability for tracking numbers to swap for new visitors. You've got to have enough tracking numbers and number pools to account for how many concurrent visitors are coming to the site. And so those details absolutely matter when you're thinking about what call tracking vendor you use and what marketing partner is helping you set this up. Devil in the details there. So that's what you got to do for calls, so that you're tagging all of the calls or capturing the session data rather of those calls, and you can tag them not just with Google Ads but with very granular campaign data. Second, develop the same concept or use the same concept for the web form submissions and the online booking platforms. Got to get the granular session data for those as well. And then the third is configuring some type of a centralized repository where you can dump all this data into. So BI tools like Power BI, you could do this in Excel. One thing to remember here is HIPAA, right? So if you're exporting information and manipulating it in some type of environment on your computer, you've got to remember, like, there's going to be patient information in there. And you know, just how you use the data or sharing it with other people, you sort of bring into play the possibility that, you know, it gets sent a certain way that it shouldn't, or something along those lines. But this is that first element, is getting the session data of all these interactions, tagging them with the proper marketing channel, and putting them together in one place. Okay. Second element here is to deduplicate leads so that you're tracking individuals and you're not just tracking interactions. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, it's really common for a patient, a person, right, to interact with your practice multiple times and in multiple ways, right? We just talked about the three different options before they end up booking an appointment. So it is massively important that you're following Google Ads attribution through those different touch points, because not all of them are going to be directly tied in many cases to that particular campaign. So we're going to use an example that I call the Michael Scott story to illustrate what I'm talking about. And this is a situation, I'm you know, using some fake data here, of course, not using real patient data. But this is a situation that happens, again, very, very commonly. So let's say Michael Scott sees a Google ad. And the first thing that he does is he fills out a request appointment form. So you've got a lead that has come in from that particular campaign in Google Ads. The practice makes an outbound call, that's what this icon represents, to Michael, and they get Michael on the phone and have a conversation with Michael, but he does not schedule a consult. Okay. So the scheduling issues, the reason not booked here, so they couldn't figure out the calendar or something along those lines. And so a little bit later on that evening, a little under 2 hours later, Michael's like, "Ooh, I'm gonna call these guys back because I've got an opening in my schedule, and they told me this time that works. Let me see if I can get them." So he calls back in, but this time he's not coming directly from the ad, right? He's just gone to Google to try to find the practice. And so this call comes in tagged in a vacuum as coming from organic search. Michael calls, the practice in this case is closed. He's like, "Dang it, I didn't get him," right? But he's still on the site. And then he sees, wait a minute, these guys have patient self-scheduling, again, a benefit of having online booking. And he's like, yes, now I can just go ahead and schedule my appointment myself. And so he does do that, right? So now this lead, this is not 4 leads, right? This is 1. So this is why we're not talking about interactions, we're talking about individuals. So just thinking about your funnel metrics being accurate, this is 1 person who booked 1 appointment. But again, think about the Google Ads attribution across multiple touch points, because in a vacuum, this booking is definitely not going to be tagged or associated with that Google Ads campaign, but we know it absolutely is, right? He saw the ad 2 hours ago, and that was the impetus for reaching out. So really critical to think about reconciling or marrying these touch points to the same person. So many reasons why, because that's like actually what's happening in reality, but specifically for optimizing Google Ads for bookings, there's going to be a lot of leakage in your feedback loop if this isn't happening, you know, in your system. We'll talk again at the end. This is one of the things that our platform automatically does for you. But as far as the do-it-yourself option, going back to the first element, we've got our unified data set, right? Where all of the interactions with session data are coming in. Now what you've got to do is use caller ID as the unique identifier. That's not perfect, but serviceable for what we're talking about here. And so hopefully hopefully you're doing that so that you can tie those touch points to the same individual. And then also you need to determine at a minimum first and last touch attribution, right? Because you got to get all those data points connected, knowing that the first one was Google Ads, even if the last one was not, and vice versa, and vice versa. So really important to have that as well. All right. Third element here is now we're going to go and optimize Google Ads for bookings, meaning make decisions about the dollars that we spend on ads with the information that we've cobbled together in our unified, data system. So in order to be able to do that, you've got to get now the status of what happened with those interactions, especially with calls and forms, because inherently you don't know if those interactions turned into a booking. So you've got to cross-reference your unified data set that's also been deduplicated with some type of pull from your EHR practice management system, so you know which of these interactions and sets of interactions resulted in a booked appointment. And then because you've got all the session data, right, where you've been able to tag the marketing channels or the marketing campaigns, you can now identify which of these bookings came from those Google Ads campaigns. And so when you're at this point, like you've got the information needed to know, okay, these are the campaigns that are not driving actual bookings. These are the campaigns that are. And so then the final step is you go into Google Ads and manually adjust your spend, right? You're taking money away from the ones that aren't driving bookings and pushing it over to the other ones. This is all possible, right? I've seen practice groups do this. It is a big undertaking. One thing to think about, I'm going to talk in a second about some things to consider. But this particular part is pretty tough to do, especially if you have a lot of campaigns going on. And I was talking with a practice group the other day just about the speed, right, of getting feedback to Google Ads on a consistent basis and how important that is to be able to take advantage of the optimization. So if you do go this route and the do-it-yourself processes we just went through, here's a couple things to consider. If you have, we're probably going to have a few minutes for questions, and I'm hopefully be able to answer as many as I can. I guess I definitely will be able to do that. But it's really important, right, to have, as I mentioned at the beginning, a marketing agency partner who knows what they're doing. In this case, specifically with Google Ads, and by knows what they're doing, like these details are really critical. So I would strongly advise consulting your marketing agency partner. We do a lot of work with Cardinal, and these are the types of things that they really understand, which is why we greatly value our partnership. So what to consider if you're going to manually optimize Google Ads for bookings? First of all, if you've got a lot of campaigns, this is going to be really hard, right? And you should have a good number of campaigns. When you're looking to optimize something, you can't just do one and say, I hope that works, right? Optimizing means you have options that you're testing against each other. And so I imagine most folks attending have a good number of those campaigns. We talked about speed a second ago. So if you've got, dozens of campaigns going, it is going to be really difficult to go into a unified data set, get an insight on what's working and what isn't for bookings, and then going into Google Ads and adjusting all those things, probably at a certain size becomes fairly unfeasible. 2, campaigns for various service types. So, in your business, I'm sure a lot of the folks on the call are, optimizing for different things, right? And some of those have a lower revenue value or lifetime value than others. So you've got to make sure that when you're going into Google Ads and adjusting campaign spend based on bookings, you're doing that sort of in a cohort basis, right? Because you don't necessarily want to take dollars away from a high value service type campaign cohort and put those into the lower dollar. That might not make sense, right? So when you're going in to manually adjust, that is something absolutely to keep an eye on. And then the third element is performance max campaigns. So these are becoming more and more popular in Google Ads. And I'm not the world's foremost expert on PMax, but essentially you are letting Google loose, right? You're leveraging Google's ability, not just in the search category, but across all assets to use Google's AI technology and essentially make some decisions for you about what keywords are hitting and different campaigns should be prioritized. All of that is automated. So again, something to ask your marketing agency partners about. We have recently seen great success with a lot of PMax campaigns, so I would absolutely look into it. But you cannot do that for bookings, right? If you're choosing the manual route to be able to do this. So, couple things to consider as you potentially embark on the do-it-yourself journey. That is the content I wanted to cover. I mentioned at the beginning, we serve marketing leaders in multi-site healthcare specialty practices. This is one of the core things that we help them with. All the stuff that we covered is automated in our system. We integrate with online booking platforms. We do the call tracking. We capture the web forms. The second piece of the deduplicating, internally, we call that leads basis. And it is like a core philosophy of the product, right? So that's a huge piece. And then we have direct integrations back into Google Ads, both general and for call extensions, so that the practices that we work with are able to take advantage of this concept of optimizing Google Ads for bookings without doing any of these things themselves. So if you were watching this presentation and you're like, we're just not going to do that, that's totally fine. We would love to be able to help. You of course can use this for other campaigns as well. But if you're interested in talking to us or just want to learn more about the things that I just covered, the QR code on the right will take you to a landing page. Quick form fill there, and we've got people standing by that'll be able to help either answer questions or set up more time if you'd like. Also, our virtual booth, we've got a couple folks standing by, there as well. So really appreciate everybody attending. I'm going to pause, and we've got a couple of minutes. I'm going into the chat here. Somebody likes the office references. A couple people do. I love that. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to hang out for, I guess we have 6 or 7 minutes-ish. And if not, that's totally fine. But I'm going to pause and see if any questions are coming up. So far, no. Somebody did a heart emoji. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Another one. Okay, cool. Online scheduling, game changer. Love it. That's very good. Let's see here. We'll give everybody about 30 more seconds. And if we don't have any questions, okay, cool. Here's one. What online scheduling providers do we integrate with? There's maybe 12 to 15 now. This would be something good that we can, if you want to reach out to us, we can tell you more about. But just name a few: Next Health, Next Patient, ZocDoc, Luma, Clearwave. Those are the 6 off the top of my head. So again, I think a dozen to 15 and counting. And if there's one that you have that wasn't on the list, a lot of times we're able to do that. Okay, thank you very much, Lucas, who just said something nice. Awesome. Okay, well, I think we're good to go. And again, appreciate everybody's time, and goodbye and see you soon.